What if I told you there was a simple way to get really consistent at skill jumps in Counter-Strike? Welcome to the world of KZ and CS2. Many people who've played CSGO probably loaded into one of these servers in the past, but from all my years of playing, it feels like everyone just kind of generally sucks at it besides really good pros. I'm here to tell you that this doesn't have to be the case, and I'm going to go over what you need to get started and how you can go from this to this. I'm also going to show you why this will undoubtedly make you a better player in competitive modes. If you want a safe and secure way to cash out your skins in under 5 minutes, head on over to sellyurskins.com. Sellyurskins.com has over 150,000 users who have used the site already. All you have to do is click the Sell tab, select your skins, and use my promo code BIRD for a 5% bonus on your skins. That's BIRD, BIRD. No shady cash traders or middlemen, just a few clicks and you're cashed out to any of the methods you see here. Head on over to sellyurskins.com and use my code BIRD for a 5% bonus on all of your skins. Thank you to Sell Your Skins for sponsoring this video. Think about a real life sport. You have many forms of tactile feedback while you're playing. Your hands are on a ball, your arms move in a certain way, you feel your feet on the ground, and many other things. In real life, this is called proprioception, or how you know where your limbs are regardless of where they are in space. In video games, we aren't so lucky yet, and we only have visual and audio cues to work with. So in my view, KZ is the best way to familiarize yourself with your in-game body and allow yourself to control what you're doing down to the micro movements, while at the same time coordinating your left and right hands together to where both are equally utilized for a common goal, playing the game. A common problem with a lot of beginner players is that they lack this hand-to-hand coordination, and this often manifests itself with having to stand perfectly still before adjusting their mice to an enemy's head. Before you start playing KZ, make sure that you're at least playing KZ on a sensitivity where you can spin and do a 180 without much effort. Back in the day, I used to double my sense to play KZ since I played on a super low sense, but now I just play on my normal sense. If you start playing KZ, you're going to quickly find that you have to do a lot of 180s. And if you have to do multiple swipes to do this, you're going to get really frustrated when it comes to the things I talk about later in this video. This video is also going to be applicable to CSGO KZ basics, as the fundamentals of how you improve at CS2 apply to CSGO as well. There's a few small differences between KZ and CSGO versus CS2, but I'm not going to go into the minutia in this video. To start, go to cs2kz.org and pick a server that's closest to you. More servers get added weekly by the global admin, so if you see a bunch that are full, just scroll down to the bottom and there's probably a new server. Now that you're in, I've provided a bind config in the description for you. Some servers do come with the menu, but a lot of the functionality in the binds is missing from a lot of these menu plugins. But in the future, you might just be able to type radio in console and see this menu with more options. So what I'm going to do is show you how to change all your binds. But don't worry, because every top KZ player ends up changing their binds, and they're really easy to remember. In my config, the 1 key sets a checkpoint if you're on the ground or you're on a ladder. 2 teleports you from where you're from to your checkpoint. 3 teleports you to the previous checkpoint. This is useful if you made a checkpoint on accident and you want to go back to the previous one. 4 sends you to the next checkpoint. And think of 3 and 4 as moving you along a timeline of checkpoints that you've made. 5 undoes a teleport, which is super helpful if you hit a jump, but you didn't expect to and you teleported and you want to undo it. 6 pauses your timer and also unpauses it. And 7 resets your timer and sends you back to the start of the map. If you want to change any of these, you can just rebind them through the console. And if you do !help, you can look in the console and bind any key to these commands and they'll automatically work. Some other helpful commands are kz_noclip, which you can bind to your normal practice noclip key just by adding a semicolon to the same command as you see here, like I did. You can also hide your legs and your view model if you want to do that. I've also included normal binds along with the binds that I described, so you only have to do them once. But feel free to change these to your heart's desire. Like for me, my 4 key is just to pull out my HE grenade and not to do cycle nades, so I just changed that line right here. But this means that you can play competitive in KZ without having to change everything back and forth, if you take the time to change it if your binds are any different. Now there are 2 types of KZ in CS2. There's classic and vanilla. In my eyes, every beginner should be playing classic to get better at competitive movement. This doesn't really make sense at first, but you're going to understand why it makes sense in a little bit. Vanilla movement is much harder due to the lower air acceleration, the lack of pre-strafing, which I'm going to explain later. And there's a lot of hard text that you have to deal with, like dead strafing. This means that players who don't solely play vanilla KZ will struggle on almost every map, because every map isn't made for vanilla. Depending on what server you pick, classic or vanilla might be on by default, so to turn it on, do !CKZ if you're following this tutorial. Red Moon has really good videos on all the specific KZ techs in vanilla, and I think that in CSGO the game mode just works better, so check them out if you want to play vanilla KZ. Okay, so how do we actually practice KZ? So I want you to see what the difference is between this random player that I found in a server and myself running KZ. Notice how this player is just jumping from block to block without trying to combine segments together. Well, I've linked all these blocks together, and I only stop a few times when I don't have the map memorized. This is called comboing, and it it wasn't possible for me to just do this on day one. In fact, it takes me a few runs of any map before I can memorize the map's fastest pattern without looking up a guide. I just kind of do it as I play it. This might seem cool and all, but why would this benefit me in a competitive environment? Well, think about how realistically you move from point A to point B in a competitive game. You aren't moving like a robot from point A to point A1 to A2 to A3 all the way to B. You're moving very fluidly. You want to be able to do complex movements, but right now you probably can't. KZ will teach you this through comboing maps. Since in a competitive map, you're basically comboing your movement all the time to do exactly what you want to do. Remember, we're trying to build control of our character to the highest possible level. Here's what I recommend to get started. Find a map that's tier 1 or tier 2. Tier 3 will be very hard if you're new to the game or new to KZ. And tier 4 maps usually require harder techniques that will basically be impossible for you right now. They have things like harder ladder jumps or scary forced B-hop sections on really tiny blocks, but I'm going to talk about these later in the video. So take your easy map and try to run it as well as you can, but learn the map as you go. Then I want you to run it again, but this time try to combo the jumps inside of each room because you're playing to improve your time. Then play to improve your time again and again and again. You kind of get the point. What we're looking to do is get the proper movement patterns down in a very unfamiliar environment. Since even though the competitive maps are set in stone, every situation is different. So we have to be ready to move in any way that I want. Like take the mid jump on Ancient, for example. I don't just hit the jump. I move out of spawn, I move up these stairs, I hit the jump, and then I have to move properly on the catwalk while trying to dodge flashes before I peek down into B. That's not just one jump. That's the entire movement together. That's what we're trying to train. If you feel like you can't combo something, just don't combo it. Not every map is perfect for comboing jumps, but as you can see from the best KZ runners in the world, there's a level to where you can essentially do everything without stopping. So the skill ceiling is really, really high. Also, I want you to get used to spamming checkpoints because it's very frustrating to hit 6 to 7 jumps in a row and fall on the 8th and have to retry them over and over again. But don't let setting checkpoints stop you from comboing. What I try to do is use some of the dead time on a block that I can't be comboing with to set a checkpoint, unless I'm super confident that I'm not going to fall in the next section. Now we're going to talk about KZ specific techs that most players seem to struggle with, and the first one is pre-strafing and long jumping. If I run at the edge of a block, the maximum speed I can get with holding one key is 250. In the classic KZ mode and not in vanilla, you can hold both W and the direction key and turn in an arc to leave with a maximum of 276 move speed rather than 250. You can see that I'm going to fly further without even air strafing. Now, if you add a few air strafes, you're going to go even further. Now, there's so much more about long jumping, and I'm really not actually that great at it, but the main goal for you should be to hit anywhere from 250 to 260 distance to start. If you look at my CSGO completion history, I have so many tier 5 map completions that 99.99% of the player base just can't do, and I suck at long jumps. But if you're hitting anything below 250 consistently, whatever you're doing in the air is not right. Because I can hit a 245 without moving my mouse in the air because I have the proper speed. What I realized while editing this video is that all the tutorials are really just bad, and people are actually worse at long jumping than I am somehow. So here's a few quick pointers. 1, you want to release W as soon as you jump. The longer you hold W after you jump, the less your first strafe is going to matter, which is the most important strafe for gaining speed. If you let go of W before you start jumping, you're going to lose speed on the ground, which is also bad. So you want to do it right as you jump. To start off trying long jumps, you really should just go for 2 or 3 strafes in the air just to get comfortable. It's not going to feel normal at first until you do it a bunch. Again, it's really not that important of a statistic. It's just a good foundational thing to have. Okay, back to the video. Some people grind long jumps without playing the actual game mode, but this will absolutely not help you get better at competitive movement. It's only going to lead you to look for shortcuts to how to get better long jump numbers and not actually get better at movement. You're going to end up doing things like long jump binding and null binding to do single key long jumps, which just don't help at all for competitive movement. Think of KZ like an aim trainer, where if you spam aim trainers by, changing your sense just to get higher scores on specific scenarios, you aren't actually getting better at aiming, you're just getting better at farming scores. I believe that if you can do a 275 long jump consistently, you probably have the skills to run every single tier 6 map in CSGO. And then when they're made for CS2, you can probably do those as well. Just focus on getting decent at long jumps, okay? Now, ladders are a scary subject, and I made a whole video about this in vanilla, but most people think that ladders are just some magical impossibility of the game, when in reality, they're just sheets of glass that you can move around on. Typically, KZ maps are going to want you to perform launches, which is where you look up and sideways from the ladder and fly off the ladder by holding 2 keys. The stage after this is called a ladder jump, which is essentially a launch in one direction and a long jump right after it. I find these much easier to do while I'm looking down, since I can see the ladder more easily. What I do is fast climb up the ladder and use the same movement keys to launch off the ladder in one direction. Then I let go of S and proceed to strafe with A and D like I would with a normal long jump. Many maps are going to force you to B-hop in certain sections, and on easier maps, they're usually very simple and are great to force you to learn how to combo on easy terrain. But as you improve, you'll want to do much harder maps and hit harder combos that aren't forced. You're just going to want to do them to improve your time. And the only advice I can give you on this is to just try it over and over and over again. And for a final piece of advice for your KZ journey, please do not run KZ Colors or KZ Variety Fix to start. KZ Colors is a literal 45-minute long map if you're good at KZ. I remember the first time I ever completed this map in CSGO, it took me 3 hours, meaning there's really little to be learned from running it. You know, it's not a bad map, but it's just extremely long, and people don't really understand this until they're 20 minutes in, and then they just give up because the map seems to never end. KZ Variety Fix is a map that's made for CSGO, and frankly, Source 2 is just bugged on this map. It's really not as fun as it was in CSGO, and it's also super long compared to every other KZ map. This map was made for no pre-strafe, 102 tick KZ servers in CSGO, which I've literally never seen before, so I don't know what the mapper was on. And the CS2 version is just a stolen port where the text on the map just don't work properly. It's also not approved by the global API team, and it probably never will be unless the original mapper decides to remap it or give permission to port it properly. We'll see on that though. If anything about KZ was made unclear by this video, I'll answer your comment in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.